Journey's End. Wesley returns, then leaves.
The Enterprise goes to meet Admiral Nechayev, and Wesley also comes aboard.
And we haven't seen him since he killed that kid, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Beverly walks him to his quarters, then Geordi and Data come in and ask him about the Academy, to which Wesley gives one-word answers.
And when Beverly leaves, we see why Will Wheaton agreed to come back for this episode. I would have done that too. I would have asked for another take just in case, though.
After everyone leaves, he sighs, and it seems like something is bothering him. And at this point, I was already kind of turned off. We haven't seen Wesley forever, and he wasn't a character I really cared about when he was around.
It seems weird to bring him back after so long and expects us to just be super invested in him again. Picard sets up the observation lounge for Nechayev's arrival, which I will note they never use as a lounge, which makes sense because it looks like it would make a lousy lounge. And Riker jokingly asks if Picard is up for a promotion because of how much he's doing.
Picard says he's just trying to ease the tension between him and Nechayev, but as soon as she walks in, she goes right to business anyway.
She tosses Riker out, but then she notices that Picard has set out her favorite food and is thrown off.
But I don't think she actually ate any of it, did she?
I don't think so. She should have at least taken some with her. She tells Picard that the Federation and Cardassians have come to a new agreement on the border between the two empires,
including making a demilitarized zone. And I was happy to see that the teacups Picard was using were designed just as poorly as that teapot.
And Picard points out that the new border puts already existing colonies of each side on the wrong side. It sounds like they planned things out really well.
She tells Picard his mission is to evacuate a colony on one of the planets that now belong to the Cardassians, and the colony is composed of Native Americans that have been there for 20 years.
Which they consistently refer to as Indians in the episode, which I thought was funny.
Picard is disturbed by the historical parallels of removing the colonists from their lands.
And he says that those people left Earth to preserve their cultural background and are now being displaced by the man again.
Nechayev says a member of the village was consulted and his concerns listened to, but also states the colonists were warned that the planet was under dispute when they moved there, and they should never have settled there in the first place.
As she leaves, she tells Picard she's sorry and thanks him for making her feel welcome, and he lies and says she will always be welcome. In engineering, Geordi tries to show off some of his improvements to the warp drive, but Wesley pulls the genius card.
And doesn't really seem to give a shit in general.
He dickishly criticizes Geordi, saying he's not up to date on the newest discoveries. Geordi disagrees and says if Wesley's going to be a dick, he better not do it in engineering because that's Geordi's territory.
Picard is meeting with the leaders of the colony and offers them similar planets to settle on, but they tell him it wasn't just the environmental conditions that made them choose that planet, and they hold a deep spiritual connection with the planet.
Picard assures them that he takes their beliefs seriously and invites them to hang out on the Enterprise that night. Beverly talks to Wesley about his attitude problems and says he should show some more maturity, and he says he's tired of everyone telling him what to do, and he storms out like an angry teenager.
In 10 Forward, the colonists are all hanging out, and Picard and their leader, Anthwara, discuss their respective histories.
Picard tries to lecture Anthwara about how sacrifices must sometimes be made for the greater good, but Anthwara shoots back, saying there are times when too much has been sacrificed and people need to stand up for themselves.
He says he would like to know more about Picard's family, and that knowing his history might help him better understand Picard.
He refers to Picard as an adversary, and Picard says hopefully they will come to see each other as something more than that.
Before pulling out his gun and telling him to get off the planet.
Wesley shows up, apologizing to his mother for being late, then goes off and sits by himself. A creepy guy creepily walks up behind him and creepily addresses him by name. When Wesley acknowledges him, he says his name is LaCanta, then he stares creepily at Wesley for a creepily long time.
And he says he's known Wesley has been coming to them due to a vision quest, and Wesley has come to find the answers that he seeks.
And then he creepily leaves.
Later, Beverly is venting to Picard about how her son is now a jerk, and says that his grades at the Academy are also going to shit. She asks Picard to talk to him, and Picard says Wesley has to want help, and right now he needs to work things out for himself, very smoothly avoiding having to talk to a child.
Wesley goes down to the planet and finds the creepy guy, LaCanta, who says he's been watching Wesley ever since he beamed down. He says they have a lot of sacred things and asks what Wesley holds sacred. Wesley says he has respect for things but doesn't regard anything as sacred.
LaCanta says Wesley is a sacred person.
Treat yourself with respect. To do otherwise is to desecrate something that is holy.
Which immediately turns Wesley into a completely different person, and he goes to start his own vision quest right then and there.
Picard and Anthwara's people have another meeting, where Picard says the colonists have no choice but to agree to leave. And one of them asks what will happen if they don't leave, and instead of pointing out that the Cardassians will undoubtedly wipe them out, Picard just says he will forcibly remove them.
Well, that didn't work in that other episode with the garbage bag aliens.
Yeah, that's true. I guess people are dumb all over the galaxy.
Anthwara says Picard will not remove the colonists, and reveals that one of Picard's ancestors forcibly displaced native tribes on Earth 700 years ago, and Picard is there now to atone for those actions.
And for some reason, when he brings up that past historical event, for no reason at all, Troy is familiar with it.
She's probably been doing research and stuff.
Going back 700 years?
Well, probably not, because we saw when she was looking for her mom's personal history, she only went back 15 minutes.
When they head outside, they find a bunch of Cardassians hanging around. Their leader, Golevek, says that the people there should have been removed by now.
And they're there doing a preliminary survey of the colony. Picard asks them to leave, but they say they won't till they're done, so he says fine, but he'll f them up if they try anything.
LaCanta shows Wesley the Habak, the location where they have their spiritual experiences, and he says spirits from all different races and animals come to them. He says it's time to start on his journey, but it's up to him to make it to the journey's end.
He tells him to start a fire and wait. Back on the ship, Picard tells Nechayev the colonists will not leave, and asks her to do something. She says she already asked, and the answer was no.
Picard tells Riker about Anthwara feeling that Picard must make up for his ancestors' actions, and he says he doesn't want the past to repeat itself, but doesn't see any other option, and tells Worf to get ready to move everyone.
In the Habak, Wesley suddenly finds himself in the village at night, where he sees his father, Jack. Jack tells Wesley that he's reached his journey's end, and it's time for him to find his own path.
Wesley comes out of his trance and goes outside, and he finds Worf setting things up to transport everyone together. So Wesley starts alerting everyone to what's happening, and they all start yelling at Worf, while LaCanta creepily observes.
Later on the ship, Picard berates Wesley for defying orders and making a tense situation worse, and Wesley says what they're doing is wrong, no matter how high the order comes from.
But Picard says it's not their decision to make, so Wesley says he's resigning. And when he walks out, Riker tells Picard that Golevek wants to discuss things and will be coming aboard.
As he's packing up in his room, Beverly demands an explanation from Wesley, and he tells her about his vision quest, where Jack told him not to follow his path.
And he says he's known for a while that he wanted to leave Starfleet.
He just couldn't admit it to himself, but everything is so clear now.
Beverly brings up the Traveler, out of nowhere, and how he creepily thought that Wesley was special.
Way back in whatever episode that was.
And she says maybe this is his first step toward whatever special destiny awaits him.
Was that season 1?
Yeah, when he first showed up, but he did show up in another episode.
But he was talking about how Wesley was special and crap all the way back in season 1.
Yeah, was Wesley in the other episode that he showed up in? I don't think so.
He did. It was the one where Beverly was in her own collapsing universe, and Wesley was touching the panel without looking at it, and it was all goofy and dumb.
Yeah, okay.
You must unreality, reality, Wesley.
Yeah, I forgot. So did Wesley show powers in that episode then?
I guess. If typing without looking is showing a power, I guess I could do that too. I feel like I'm transcending to a new plane of existence.
Hopefully it's one where the Traveler doesn't exist. Later on the planet, the natives are taking their Cardassians prisoner, telling Worf that they have no business being on that planet.
Up on the Enterprise, Picard begs Golevek to transport the other Cardassians out of the village, but Golevek refuses, and orders an armed rescue squad to beam down instead. And Picard says if they do that, he'll be forced to protect the colonists and undo everything both sides have been working for.
Down on the planet, the Cardassian prisoners start fighting back, and Worf doesn't know what to do, which is pretty funny. Then Wesley rushes in and yells, causing everything to turn into a frozen green screen.
LaCanta, who is not frozen, walks towards Wesley and says Wesley pulled himself out of their time to another plane of existence,
taking the first step on a new journey that will have a different journey's end.
He then reveals himself to be the Traveler and says that Wesley has evolved and offers to be his creepy guide.
He says the vision Wesley saw came from his own mind and offers to guide Wesley on his new journey to weird alien places.
Then, in an unintentionally comical moment, Wesley asks what he can do to help the situation on the planet, and the Traveler says they must have faith that everyone can solve their problems on their own, Then they walk away as everyone starts moving again and killing each other.
Picard tries to convince Gulivek not to send troops down, saying they need to avoid another costly war, and Ivek finally agrees and has his men beamed up. Picard orders his people beamed up as well, and Ivek tells Picard that he lost 2 of his sons in the last war with the Federation.
Later, Picard tells Anthwara if he chooses to stay, they will be under Cardassian jurisdiction and are revoking their Federation privileges. Everyone is okay with this, and Anthwara tells Picard he has atoned for his family's actions.
And I thought that was the epilogue of the episode, but it turns out there's another one. Wesley says the Traveler said he should stay on the planet because the people there are aware of many things, and he says bye to Beverly and beams out.
Journey's End. Overall,
this episode turned out to be at least slightly more interesting than I thought it would at first. The A-plot with the so-called Indians not wanting to leave the planet was pretty standard TNG stuff, but I was surprised they got as close to starting a war as they did. I thought something would happen that would change their mind about staying on the planet, but that didn't happen. The Cardassians were handled with more complexity than most villains in this show, which was nice. The natives, on the other hand, were yet another example of the show portraying a certain people in a very stereotypical way, which doesn't help to make them feel like real people. The resolution of that plot didn't really make sense. How many of those people are on the planet if they were regularly hopping from planet to planet before? And why would the Cardassians agree to let them have that planet? At the most, I would think they would just give them the equivalent of a reservation on the planet if they let them stay there at all, which I didn't buy in the first place. And then Wesley's B-plot was something that I kept forgetting was even happening when he wasn't on screen. His arc in this episode was ridiculous, starting with his childish behavior on the Enterprise, then having a vision of his dad that he apparently pulled out of his own head, meaning it didn't really mean anything, I guess, then having the Traveler show up, and Wesley displaying god powers. When Picard makes his report, is he going to mention that? Because Starfleet would be very interested in learning more about Wesley, and since his mother is still in Starfleet, I would think they would be pestering her for information constantly. I thought that was a really weird direction to go in for his character, especially since we haven't seen him in forever, and now that apparently is his conclusion for the series, because I don't think he's going to come back, given there's so few episodes left. I liked seeing Worf so off balance and not knowing what to do pretty much throughout this episode. That was pretty funny. And I liked seeing Wesley talking back to Picard when they had their argument, but I didn't especially like anything else. Apparently a lot of people consider this one of the worst episodes of the show. I definitely don't agree with that, but it definitely wasn't very good. I gave it a D+.
I gave it a D. Going off of what you said about the reports, do you think Starfleet headquarters looks forward to the Enterprise mission logs, or dreads having to get them? The implications of all this stuff they run into. The Enterprise itself doesn't ever seem to deal with it, but someone has to deal with it. It's probably the shit job back at Starfleet headquarters to have to be in charge of filing all the Enterprise's reports and having to figure out what to do with all of that information.
Yeah, I wonder if they feel like they're just creating a bunch of problems out in the galaxy.
Maybe they're constantly sending out messages of, stop doing whatever you're doing, but they're just never reaching the crew because somebody forgot to flip that little toggle switch on. So they just keep continuing through space, making everything worse. I thought Will Wheaton's acting was not very good. When he was on the ship, him rolling his eyes to everyone that talked to him was too blatantly obvious, and my already indifference towards Wesley turned into straight dislike by his shitty attitude. And yeah, this is his character's journey's end. What a way to send off someone who used to be a main character, by having him act like a jerk, throwing tantrums left and right, and then just walking away as everyone else is shooting each other.
With a smile on his face.
Him pulling a complete 180 by someone telling him, hey, you should treat yourself with respect, was also ridiculous. Bringing up the Traveler was weird, and the fact that he turned out to be an integral part of the plot right at the very end was just as weird. I question if it was even necessary to bring Wesley back at all. Maybe if they had done at least one episode before this one where he rejoined the crew and was at least around, it would have made more sense. But his character arc through this episode, the trajectory was out of control, and then it was done, and now he's gone. So what other character are they going to bring back that hasn't been around for seasons and have them just go on some weird-ass journey until it ends?
Maybe the schizoid man isn't really dead.
I was thinking about that admiral who had the bug attached to him in Conspiracy, who got kicked with Riker's high kicks. Is he actually dead, or did they just pull off the thing and he's alive?
Good question.
But at least we're getting closer and closer to that romance that develops between Picard and Nechayev. Because I know in Picard they get together.
What is it? Are you serious?
I just made that up. But it's so dumb, it could be true. I haven't actually seen Picard yet.
Oh, now I'm kind of scared.
I guess we'll see.